Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Salaam alaikum, and welcome back to another edition of Muslims Uncensored with me, Robert Carter, and old man Roshan with his old man jumper once again. Welcome back to the show, Roshan. Thank you so much to everyone at home for tuning in. Boy, do we have an episode for you here today. We are delving into the realm of conspiracy theories, as of course today marks the 23rd anniversary of the 9/11 attacks on America. This is a controversial event, and I think that despite all of these so many years on following that fateful day, to be honest with you, there's still a lot of popular conspiracy theories surrounding the event and what led up to it and who was behind it. And I would argue that perhaps the majority of the Muslim world, perhaps even many others who are non-Muslim as well, still question the official narrative of 9/11. But before we dive on into that, Roshan, you always like to start these shows talking about whatever it is that you like to talk about. How's it going? I mean, how do you feel about today's show? Are you into conspiracy theories?
Well, someone just knocked on the door. Was it the busies?
I think they've shut us down. I
Yeah,
think
shutting us down.
the MI6 have jumped at
Yeah, as
last.
soon as he said 9/11, they were like,
Shut it
yeah,
down! Shut it down!
it was like a police raid or something.
I know.
Yeah.
I know you've been looking forward to this show, Roshan. You're.
Well, I
Are
mean,
you are you a conspiracy nut?
I think that, yeah, I mean, just to say out my position from the start, my general thoughts are that Al Qaeda did do it, but they had some kind of inside help. I'm not saying they worked directly with the Americans to do it, but I think, and I'll get into the details a bit later, I think the Americans, or part of the deep state in America, I'm not saying George Bush knew or whatever, but they were tracking these guys. They knew what their intentions were. They knew they were going to do it, and they let it happen. And they let it happen because they wanted to implement a plan to invade and civilize the Muslim world.
Really? So I know that there are several, I guess, popular conspiracy theories. There's probably like a million conspiracy theories, by the way. Everyone has their own theory.
Before we get into that, where were you on 9/11? You must have been like in nappies, right?
I was young. I
you?
remember basically all I remember. I don't even remember my age at the time.
Teenager,
I was
probably.
I was a teenager. I was at school. All I remember is coming home, and it was playing out on TV, and my mum was like traumatized or upset or whatever, because obviously this was something new and big. I wasn't Muslim at the time. This was before my Shahada. But to be honest with you, looking back on it now, I would say that coincidentally, this was actually the beginning of my journey towards Islam. I know it's going to sound a bit unusual.
Yeah, no,
but
not at all. No.
This incident, of course, I guess introduced me to Islam because I didn't have any Muslim friends, didn't know much about religion at the time apart from my Church of England upbringing. And so now Islam came to the forefront of media coverage and headlines, and Muslims were all evil and terrorists now. And so that became a big thing. Like my view of Muslims was, oh, these guys have a problem with the West.
Yeah.
And then when I went and met a Muslim for the first time in secondary school, I was like, hang on a minute, Muslims aren't like they're being portrayed in the media. And that's what led me towards Islam eventually.
I think tens of thousands of people, if not more than that, hundreds of thousands, probably converted to Islam because of 9/11. Because they got interested in the media coverage, Muslims being demonized, Muslims as the bogeyman, and that sparked their interest.
And it's not the first and only time that this has happened, actually. Well, maybe it was the first, but now with Gaza going on, again, another traumatizing, horrific incident that's playing out in the news. And again, Muslims are all being branded as terrorists and extremists, and Islam is being blamed for the violence. But actually, in the West, there's a spike in conversions. There are people picking up the Quran, realizing the truth, and they're actually embracing Islam because they see what the Palestinians are going through. Again, it happens like this. It's SubhanAllah. It's a miracle from Allah, to be honest with you.
I was SubhanAllah. I was probably kind of, I guess, about 27 years old. I think I was working at London Weekend Television, which is a production house, so in central London. So I was around non-Muslims, I was working with non-Muslims. I was probably one of two Muslims in the room of about 100 people. They put the TVs on. The first plane had already gone into the World Trade Center, but then I think we all watched the second plane go in live, and as did hundreds of millions of people around the world. And then people were shocked. I was like, obviously, I was involved in Islamic politics before that, so I knew who bin Laden was. I knew that he wanted to attack America. I had some kind of context, but the people around me didn't have any context. They were just dumb non-Muslims. Sorry to put it that way, but in terms of their knowledge of Islam, you know, and Islam versus the West, it was practically zero. So they were looking, they were shocked, they were traumatized. People were crying. I mean, none of them were Americans. They were all Brits, white Brits for the main, but they identified with America. They felt the West was under attack. And then we saw the buildings collapse. So we just glued to our TV for several days.
Yes.
Several hours.
Yes, I do remember these types of images like what we see there playing out on TV. But yeah, I don't remember a lot of it. I more remember the aftermath of what happened and the effects that started to be felt. And obviously this was the start. I remember the wars like the invasion, occupation of Iraq and Afghanistan that followed and how that played out. And obviously that was big news every single day for years and years. And then, of course, the target was Iran. I remember Saudi Arabia was starting to be linked to it. And for many years, even now, I think they're still claiming that there's a Saudi link. So we'll get into all of that, of course. But I guess, I mean, what happened? I mean, who do you actually...
I mean, should we, before we get into that, should we actually look at, I mean, I put up a question today on our Twitter feed, and I put up a couple of polls as well. Should we see what people are saying? I don't know whether we can go full screen, Jamal, on this and scroll down and see what people are saying.
So basically, you put a tweet up on 5 Pillars, basically contextualizing what's going on the 23rd anniversary and saying it's controversial, huge dispute among Muslims. Let's go down and see what people are saying. 19 hijackers working for Al-Qaeda masterminded by Osama bin Laden. That's pretty much the official narrative.
What an utterly disgusting thing to post.
Yeah.
Nothing disgusting. We're just asking a question that millions of people around the world, including millions of Americans, are also asking.
A lot of people are calling us radical Islamic terrorism for some reason. I don't know why. Someone says the dancing tribe is responsible.
So this is a reference to the dancing Israelis.
Oh yeah.
Which we'll get onto later.
That's a popular conspiracy theory. Yeah. More people saying Israel or Mossad.
Most people are saying Israel here.
Israel or Mossad. They're linking it. Let's see. So someone here talking about Saudi Arabia or Muslim Brotherhood involvement.
Right. Okay.
Radical Islam is behind it. They're claiming. This is, again, something worth mentioning, I guess, is these kind of blanket statements that, oh, Islam is responsible for this. But they never talk about, like, for example, Western imperialism in the Muslim world that inspires radicalization and stuff like that. So I guess that...
So I think in terms of our Twitter feed, I think the majority of people are saying Israel. The majority of people are saying Israel.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear.
Then...
I think
others are saying radical Islamists, Al-Qaeda. Others are saying inside job. I put up a Twitter poll, a Telegram poll on our social media pages and a WhatsApp. So the question is, who do you think is responsible for 9/11? So I put this up a few hours ago. It's had about 315 votes, and 65% are saying inside job.
Okay, I can see it here. So
8% are saying bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, and 27% are saying a combination of the above, which I guess is my position. And just to finish this off on WhatsApp as well, I put up a poll and asking the same question. It's had about I don't know, 250 replies so far. Inside job is the vast majority, 212 people saying inside job. Bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, 3 people, only 3, say it was Al-Qaeda, and 27 say a combination of the above. So that's where kind of our viewers and readers stand. Israel did it first.
Israel did it.
Inside job second.
Inside job.
And
the official narrative.
The official narrative third. So I think what we're trying to prove, because some people watching this might be quite shocked, because we're living in London, and in our country, the mainstream media has already made up its mind on this, and you're a nutter, it's sacrilegious to say anything different. But the reality in the Muslim world and amongst Muslims is that most people don't believe the official narrative. Whenever I travel in the Middle East, for example, or go to places like Pakistan or whatever, South Asia, like literally the amount of people that believe the official Western narrative, you can count on one hand. I would say it's less than 5%.
Yes, I'm sure you're
So
absolutely
this
right
is
there.
why we're talking about this.
Yeah, so basically, you do get persecuted almost for speaking out against official
Yeah.
narratives. But that in itself is very peculiar. Why are you not allowed to ask questions about this? Especially because this was one of the most horrific attacks. And there was so much peculiar, weird stuff going on at the time. Questions about George Bush's administration and how did they not know? I mean, America is a very sophisticated
Yeah.
country. How did it not know it was under attack of this degree?
What's your position on it, Robert?
I
What do you
must
think
admit,
happened?
I definitely don't believe the official narrative.
Right.
I think if you just look at how they lied about Iraq, they lied about Vietnam, false flag operations, all these types of horrific things they've done in the third world, I just don't believe it. I don't trust deep state. I don't trust big government. I think that they have a vested interest to lie about this. And as we saw, it played out for them very well when they went in and stole oil and destroyed all of these Muslim countries, going in there and hogging all the oil and stealing the natural resources. I think that similar to you, maybe they knew about it and just didn't act.
Do you think Al
But
Qaeda
I
did it?
think,
Do you think Al Qaeda did it? Or had any involvement at all?
well, what's weird about that? This is what I'll tell you. What I find really suspicious is that originally, didn't Osama bin Laden deny involvement
He
originally?
did it, I think, in the days after 9/11. I think subsequently he kind of admitted it in about 2004 in a videotaped Al Jazeera interview. He basically said we called for it. He denied planning it or doing it, but I think later he basically said that we called for it and others did it.
I mean, that's okay. So let me just try and build a picture here. So the attack happens somehow, like literally the most devastating attack on the West ever happened. Immediately they knew who it was, even though the guy who apparently did it denied involvement. And then they attacked Iraq and Afghanistan over it. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me.
I mean,
Roshan.
I
what's
think
going on here? And then
I
you're
think it's
telling me
very
that
complicated. Yeah.
then you're telling me later on, a couple of years down the line, Osama bin Laden kind of confessed or
Yes.
kind of didn't. It's like, what's going on here? And if you think about all of the, like, for example, Dick Cheney, his involvement with the arms trade, he had
Oil
this
companies.
type of thing. I mean, it's like they were looking for any excuse to go to war, and then one magically shows up. And this is
Oh, yeah.
this is a country that we know lies to start wars, like Vietnam. So I'm sorry, Roshan, but I'm sorry, but don't talk to me like I'm some kind of idiot here, Roshan. I do not believe it. It's something going on here. There's something going on here. I mean, the journalism in you, the journalist in you, must be wondering what is
Yeah,
going on.
I'll
What
explain
a
what I think.
ridiculous story.
Look, I was following Al Qaeda and Bin Laden as a journalist, just to kind of emphasize as a journalist. From the mid 1990s.
Yeah.
Bin Laden came on the radar. I would say mid 1990s. He'd been expelled from Saudi Arabia because of his opposition to the first Gulf War, and Saudi Arabia allowing the Americans to use it as a land base. He went to Sudan, then he was expelled from Sudan to Afghanistan, and he had consistently called for attacks on America. And he hadn't really different. Actually, he even came out with a fatwa, I think, in 1997, saying that even American civilians or Western civilians were a fair target, not just military targets. So that was a very controversial and famous fatwa. He did make it. Whether he was qualified to make a fatwa or not is another issue. Then there was the embassy attacks in Kenya and Tanzania, which he did claim responsibility for. That happened, I think, in 1999. So he was someone who clearly was calling for attacks on the West. And he had even been involved in a few. And I think in Yemen as well, there was a US ship off the coast of Yemen, which was attacked. I think that was an Al Qaeda attack too. So this all preceded September the 11th. So I think that I was not surprised when he was kind of fingered, the finger was pointed at him after 9/11. And I think subsequently he denied responsibility. I think that might have been because he was based in Afghanistan and he had effectively abused the hospitality of the Taliban, which was running Afghanistan at the time, because it was the Taliban that would suffer the consequences of that. So I think he obfuscated a little bit. He was a bit kind of vague about responsibility. He didn't want to claim responsibility because he knew that would result in an immediate strike on Afghanistan and on his hosts, effectively, which is what happened. So I think that's the reason why he was being a bit vague. However, I find the notion that Al-Qaeda did it and it was just Al-Qaeda and nothing else was going on, I find that fanciful. That is the official version. These guys who were Al-Qaeda operatives ultimately, based in Europe, I mean, there were Arabs based in Europe, 15 of them were Saudis, one of them was Lebanese, and 2 of them from the UAE, I believe. They were literally on the radar of the authorities in America for a year or more than a year. They knew they were in America. They knew they were taking flying lessons. They were literally on the radar. And yet they still did what they did. And why weren't the flights scrambled? Why weren't those planes shot down immediately? Why did it take like 1 hour? Then we have the buildings collapsing like they did in a very suspicious manner. So there were so many, and then obviously the passports were found and all this convenient kind of, and then we also know that prior to September the 11th, there was a cohort of pro-Zionist American officials, neocons, who wrote the project for the New American Century. This was prior to 9/11, with the plan of invading the Muslim world and democratizing it. And all they needed was a casus belli. They needed a excuse to do it. And 9/11 provided them with the excuse. So putting that all together, the fact that I know the mindset of Al-Qaeda, and I do believe they would have done this if they could have gotten away with it, and knowing the mindset of the Americans being liars and also being very keen to invade the Muslim world, I think it was a combination of the two. I think Al-Qaeda did do it. I think they planned it. And I think the deep state in America, I'm not saying George Bush or whatever, but I'm saying the deep state in America allowed it to happen.
One of the things which I think is really interesting is the link or the claim that there were countries involved in the attack or helped somehow to make the attack happen. So Saudi Arabia, that's obviously been linked to the attack on many occasions, even now, I think. Iran as well, interestingly enough, has also been linked to it. But also Israel. Israel has been linked to this. And we saw that play out in the comments section. A lot of people genuinely still believe that there is some kind of Mossad or Israeli connection to the attack. What you see on screen now is 5 Israelis who were arrested at the time of the attack. And it's led to a very popular conspiracy theory called the 5 Dancing Israelis. Now, very briefly, I'll mention this. So there's some truth to the story itself, but it seems as if there's a lot of fake news about which has led to the conspiracy. So the fact is that there were 5 Israelis arrested.
Right.
That actually happened. And an eyewitness claimed that she saw these 5 Israelis, quote unquote, celebrating with the towers burning in the background. So they were standing on a van somewhere, dancing and celebrating or whatever. Coincidentally, they were not, the eyewitness didn't claim that they were dancing. So the dancing Israeli conspiracy theory is not true in the sense that there were 5 Israelis dancing.
Yeah.
But she claimed that they were like high-fiving and hugging each other apparently whilst the building was burning in the background. So there's like some truth to it, but there's also some fake stuff as well. Let's play out a small clip of an actual report that was filed at the time of this very story as it was happening, because it was big news at the time of the incident.
It began when this woman was watching the Twin Towers burning from her apartment in New Jersey. She noticed 3 men on top of a van, posing for pictures with the towers burning in the background.
And I could see that they were like happy. You know, they didn't look shocked to me. You know, they didn't look shocked. I thought it was very strange.
The witness called police, who stopped the van hours later and arrested 5 men. All 5, it turns out, were Israeli. They were turned over to the FBI. Sources tell ABC News during a check of national security databases, some of the men were listed as having had connections with Israeli intelligence.
So that's a brief introduction to the story. So something did happen related to these Israeli individuals. An investigation went underway, and to be honest, at the time, it appears that a lot of people were very, very suspicious about Mossad involvement, to be honest with you. There were accusations swirling around, and America, of course, was very tense and on edge at the time. Afterwards, the Israelis then appeared on television and began to speak out about their treatment and about what they were apparently up to. And this is a small clip again of the Israelis involved speaking to press after their arrest and release.
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad. The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event.
So this is where the conspiracy comes from. Now, according to the investigation, I think the police, the FBI investigated and questioned them. They were released without charge. There wasn't a link found linking them to Israeli intelligence or anything like that, or any involvement in the attack. So that's the official narrative. So although this happened, there is no official proof or evidence to say that they were involved in the attack in any way, shape, or form, or that Israeli intelligence was involved. However, that hasn't stopped theories and conspiracies swirling around, like what were they doing? Why were they high-fiving or taking selfies whilst the building behind them was burning down? So yeah, that's a very popular one, which has been debunked, but still persists as a very popular conspiracy theory.
Yeah. All right, so you asked 3 questions in one there. So Saudi Arabia, obviously 15 of the hijackers were Saudi Arabian. I don't think there was any Saudi state involvement in it really, apart from the fact that, I mean, the Saudis did have a line to Al-Qaeda and to bin Laden because they were trying to persuade him to come back to the kingdom. I think it was Turki al-Faisal, one of the princes, had a direct line to him, and they obviously knew each other. But I think once bin Laden called for the overthrow of the Saudi royal family, that was it, you know, so they didn't have any further involvement. But obviously bin Laden still had links to the kingdom and to people inside the kingdom, his sources of finance, etc. But I don't think Saudi Arabia would have attacked America simply because they were a big ally of America. They were in the pocket of America in many ways. We all know that they've sold America cheap oil for 70 years plus. With the proviso that the Saudis the Americans give Saudis protection, military protection.
But I have to come back a little bit there because obviously American military boots were on the ground in Saudi Arabia for a time, and wasn't that one of the initial reasons which sparked
but it was sanctioned.
Osama bin Laden's calls for
the Americans basically had hundreds of thousands of troops based in Saudi Arabia during the first Gulf War, and those bases persisted even after that war finished. And they only left Saudi Arabia very recently. Even now, there's still CIA bases in Saudi Arabia.
So it makes sense then. It makes sense then that some Saudis might want to force America off of their land, force it off of Arabic territory.
The key point, Robert, is that it was officially sanctioned by the Saudi authorities. The Saudi authorities were in bed with the Americans and are still in bed with the Americans. So these people that wanted to attack... No, but listen,
the claim is, Roshan, actually, that Saudi individuals that may have been in senior ranking in the state were involved. So Saudi financiers and stuff like that were part of the establishment.
I
don't think they necessarily claim that Saudi Arabia as an entire state attacked the West. But they say that basically members of the Saudi establishment may have been involved.
I'm sure bin Laden would have still had friends within the Saudi deep state and establishment, and they might have been sympathetic to his cause.
Funding them?
I'm sure they allowed, because obviously the funding was cut to bin Laden after a certain time. He still managed to get millions and millions somehow. So I'm sure that within the deep state, he must have had connections. I'm saying is there's no direct Saudi involvement, but behind the scenes, there might have been elements of the Saudi state which assisted. Because obviously there are people that are working even today for the Saudi state that will not agree with what MBS is doing, that will find it unconscionable that Saudi is taking a westernized direction. So those people did exist. They exist now, and they would have existed back then as well.
I wonder. This is a new theory. This is a Robert Carr theory. Do you think that maybe the Western reforms that's being forced on Saudi Arabia could be retaliation for Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11? Do you think that could be what's at play here?
No, I just think that MBS is driving.
I mean, it was a coup, wasn't it? I mean, there was a coup in Saudi Arabia, a soft coup, wasn't there? The Crown Prince seizing power, and a lot of the old guard were kind of purged from leadership
I just think,
positions.
I just think,
People who may have been involved somehow.
I just,
I
I
think
just,
that's very suspect. And now look at it, like they're attacking Islam in Saudi Arabia, in fact, with
I
Western
think we're going
support.
off on a tangent here, but I think that
That's the Robert Carter theory. Tell me what you think of the comment section below. That's a good one.
MBS is just a guy who's grown up in a westernized Saudi Arabia with all the privileges and the entertainment
You're
that goes along
very
with it.
gullible, aren't you, Roshan? You believe anything the officials
Well, if you
tell
allow me
you
to
in
finish a sentence,
Washington.
maybe if you allow me to finish a sentence, maybe I can explain what I
Well,
think.
all right, well, finish this sentence then. What about Iran's
You think you're like
involvement?
Jeremy Paxman and Newsnight here or something like that. Can't get a word out.
You're used to an easy ride here at Five Pillars. Everyone just gives you an easy
No,
go.
I just expect to be, be able to finish my sentence.
No,
Is that too much
absolutely
to
not.
ask?
No. Tell me about
Someone
Iran.
ask me a question then, if you're not going to allow me to answer the question.
Well, tell me what I want to hear, and I'll let you finish
Yeah.
the answer. All
So
right,
basically, you
tell
asked
me
me a
about
question there, but didn't allow me to answer it. Fair enough. Let's
Tell me
move on.
about Iran then. Tell me about Iran then. They're apparently linked to it. You know all about it.
Well,
Go on.
How long do I have? 10 seconds to answer, or kind of?
You're eating into your
No,
time.
no.
Roshan.
The Al Qaeda connection with Iran is simply that after the invasion of Afghanistan, elements of Al Qaeda fled Afghanistan towards Iran. Iran is Afghanistan's neighbor, and the Iranians put them under house arrest. So I think Bin Laden's family, part of Bin Laden's family, spent a few years in Iran. So they had Al Qaeda people under their. What's that? Was that you?
That's me. Yeah, go on.
All
Sorry.
right. They had. You'll do anything to interrupt me, won't you? They had elements of Al Qaeda and people very close to Bin Laden living in Iran under house arrest for many years. But in terms of attacking America, no, I just don't believe that. I don't believe there's the evidence that you might argue Iran might have a motive for doing it, but I don't think they would have got in bed with Al Qaeda to do it because they wouldn't have trusted Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda think they're Kafirs anyway. You know, Al Qaeda have that Takfiri ideology where they think all Shia are Kafir.
Yes, okay, so that's a fair point. I think it makes sense why the Americans would want to push the line that Iran was involved somehow, because it might justify the
Yeah,
US
because they wanted
invasion
to
of
attack Iran.
exactly for many, many years. I guess the
Dancing Israelis.
dancing Israelis. Okay, so what's
What do
your
you think
view?
of that?
What do you think of that?
Okay, I think it's circumstantial. Unfortunately, people are going to say, "Oh, you're in the pocket of Mossad. You're a Zionist. You're a secret Zionist." I think it's circumstantial. I'm the kind of guy that likes to kind of have lots of evidence and concrete evidence before. I think this is the Islamic position as well. You know, even if you look at Sharia law, you know, it takes 4 eyewitnesses to, you know, litigate certain crimes, etc. So I'm the kind of guy that wants to have lots of evidence before jumping to a conclusion. So I think it's circumstantial. I think obviously it's based on one eyewitness. It is suspicious, there's no doubt about it. And the fact that the FBI exonerated that means nothing to me because, yeah, that's even more suspicious, quite frankly, because, you know, the FBI could have been in cahoots. But is it something which would stand up in court and even a Sharia court? No, it wouldn't.
Yes, I think that is a fair point to make. I mean,
However, because obviously a lot of people think that Israel has some involvement in this, I would say what is sure is that pro-Israeli people in the American administration, people like Paul Wolfowitz and others, they took advantage of 9/11 to implement their evil plans to invade the Muslim world, to destroy Muslim societies, all in the interests of Israel and the wider American project. I think that is indisputably true.
yes, sure. Now, obviously, you know,
But that doesn't
We'll have
mean
to-
I believe that the Israeli state did 9/11. I don't.
yeah, sure. I mean, it is a tricky one, and I think now, I mean, we've gone in a direction where we're focusing on involvement of groups and other countries and kind of the Muslim world, but we haven't even delved into the massive disputes over the actual incident itself. Like, were the buildings blown up? Was there bombs planted and things like that? How they fell, the iron casting, and how the plane hit. There's loads of weird stuff. There's the Pentagon was hit. Do you remember that? The
Yeah, of
Pentagon was
course I
hit.
remember it, yeah.
Yeah, and I believe that the part of the Pentagon that was hit. I mean, the crash site looked weird as well. So there's all sorts of conspiracies about whether it was a genuine hit or not, or a demolition or something. And there was talk prior to 9/11 of loads of missing money. So the Bush administration had confessed that there was trillions of dollars missing. and they couldn't account for it. And then the part of the Pentagon that was hit by this plane was the bit where they were investigating where all this money had gone.
Is that true, what you just said? Or is it?
It's been reported.
Right.
You do your research.
On davidicke.com.
It's been reported.
Lizard.co.uk.
Basically, I'm listing all of the conspiracy theories. I'm not going to say whether
You're
they're
just
true
putting
or
it
not.
out there, aren't you? You're putting
just
all
peddling.
the rubbish out there and just
Well,
taking no responsibility for
the
it.
fact of the matter is that these theories exist. They remain popular until today, 23
Yeah,
years
they do,
on, and there's a reason for it. And to be honest with you, don't blame me, Mr. Establishment Deep State, because no one trusts you. It's because you're a bunch of liars and freaks who take us to war and kill a bunch
That's the
of
reason.
people, for innocent people. Do you know what I mean?
I think that's important. That's the most sensible thing you've actually said today so far, is that there's a reason why there are so many conspiracy theories around there, and some of them are crazy.
Yeah.
And that is because nobody believes the Americans, because they're a bunch of liars. They've lied so many times. We don't believe anything they say. We don't believe it. I don't believe the 9/11 Commission report. I'm sorry, if you're going to be the kind of person that just takes the word of these people that have literally invaded countries on the basis of lies for decades and decades and killed so many of our Muslim brothers and sisters around the world, and non-Muslims as well, if you're going to take their word for it, then you're a dupe, you're a patsy, you're a chump.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just weird, isn't it, that they killed. I think they had the opportunity. They could have captured Osama bin Laden. They went in and assassinated him.
The Taliban agreed to hand him over to a third country. They asked for evidence, first of all, and the Americans didn't supply any evidence. They just said you have 2 weeks or whatever to hand him over.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they said we will send him to a third country to be tried under Islamic law. So that was their offer. Their offer wasn't taken, and the Americans they'd already made up their minds to invade.
And they never indicted Osama bin Laden, I don't think. So
No trial.
There was no trial.
Summary execution.
Absolutely. So I mean, that is so weird. I mean, wherever you stand on the fence, the fact that they could have brought him in and they didn't, it's just very, very peculiar. Very peculiar. Surely they would have wanted him.
Let's believe the Americans for a minute. Let's suspend reality and assume the Americans were actually telling the truth. Even if bin Laden did do it, then they did not have to invade Afghanistan. They could have done they could have done a drone attack, like they do so many times. Or they could have done a limited policing operation. I mean, I don't agree with any of those things, but they didn't have to go in and invade the whole country, overthrow the government, cause chaos, death and destruction, murder innocent people,
a lot of innocent
stay there
people.
for 20 years, use it as a base to attack other countries. They didn't have to do all of that. It was completely unjustified. And even now, some Muslims, they believe that Iraq was the bad war, but there was some justification for Afghanistan. No, there was no justification for Afghanistan either.
Yeah, and the fact is that, I mean, I don't even want to go into a new conspiracy theory about the creation of ISIS. We'll do that in another episode. But people talk about who created ISIS. Well, what we do know is true is that the environment in which ISIS came about was because of those reckless Western attacks on the Muslim world, which destabilized it. I mean, the destruction of Iraq. I'm confident ISIS wouldn't have come if Iraq had been left, to kind of get on with itself. It was the destruction of the state, which the US and UK and their allies did, that literally ripped that society open, and it's never healed till today.
That was pre-planned. Even General Wesley Clark, I think the ex-commander of NATO, in a famous video, he says something like, they were planning on invading 7 countries: Iraq,
Syria,
Sudan, Libya, and a few others. And I think they've managed to invade all but Iran so far, maybe. So everything was pre-planned. They were just looking for an excuse. And the only debate in my eyes is whether bin Laden offered them that excuse on a plate, or whether there was some kind of deep state American involvement with Al-Qaeda. But the notion that bin Laden is totally innocent in this, I personally don't buy, because I was following his ideology and his statements well before 9/11. So I just don't buy that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, I guess the only final thing to discuss on this would be the aftermath, how this affected the Muslim world afterwards. I think you're very experienced to know that, because you were reporting around that time. You've been reporting ever since. I mean, what effects has it had?
The two most obvious effects were the invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq, which destroyed 2 countries, destabilized the whole Middle East. You could even argue they led to the Arab Spring in many ways, because they destabilized these countries, and the Arab Spring as well, despite starting reasonably well, spiraled out of control, led to huge death and destruction, destroyed another country, Syria. So that's the most obvious example.
What about Muslims in the West?
Yeah, exactly. The other obvious thing is the impact it's had on Muslims in the West, especially. And Islam became more demonized after 9/11 by the mainstream media, by vested interests, by politicians, the rise of right-wing movements. Obviously, in America, you had the Patriot Act. In Britain, you had Prevent. So Muslims became a suspect community whereby we were innocent before proven guilty. We were put under surveillance, put under monitoring, censored, some jailed, control orders, and generally a climate of fear and an impact of freedom of speech. Even now, the freedom of speech of Muslims is restricted in the West compared to what it is for non-Muslims.
Yeah, I don't think a single Muslim has been able to go through an airport anywhere in the world without being facing intimidation,
Schedule 7,
Schedule 7,
search,
stop and
many
search.
many things. But on the other hand, I honestly believe, I don't have the figures, but I'm guessing that hundreds of thousands of people, perhaps millions of people, actually converted to Islam because of 9/11, because of the demonization of Islam. People can see through propaganda now. They know that we can't be these devils with horns and tails. They know that there's something. We are people that believe in something and have a cause, and that's the best thing when you study Islam. That is the gateway to conversion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most eye-opening thing to me was I was being told from a young age that Islam has an issue with the West, and that this attack was an Islamic attack on the West. And that Islam wants to come here. Islam is the aggressor in this. But I actually realized, do you know what? Muslims are the victims in all of this ultimately, because if the West wasn't going there and destroying and attacking Muslim lands, then these terrorist groups wouldn't have been created. I think that ultimately there is no plot for Islam to take over the West. Muslims, by and large, are actually very nice, happy, peaceful people. It's the aggression is going from one direction to the other mostly, and it's from the west to the east.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when you attack and bomb and destroy a country, it radicalizes people and creates terror groups, and then they commit acts. But it's not something that's condoned by the majority. Of the
No, I
Muslim
think we
world,
should make this clear, just for non-Muslims and haters watching this. We do believe that what happened on 9/11 was haram. It's haram to kill civilians. And a lot of Muslims died in, cleaners and people working in the World Trade Center at that time. I think over 100 Muslims died on that day. No, they weren't collateral damage, So I believe 100% that it is haram to attack civilian targets. And ultimately, the World Trade Center was a civilian target. People could say the Pentagon wasn't. That argument has been met. I make no comment on that. But we believe it is strictly haram to attack civilians.
Absolutely. Well, there's a couple of other stories I want to discuss before the show ends. Bringing us over to the UK now.
We should, brothers and sisters, you have to leave comments on this show, by the way. We want to know what you think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know I'm going to be attacked for being a Zionist stooge by some people. What are you going to be attacked? You're going to be a nutter or something like that?
Conspiracy nut.
Conspiracy nut, Zionist stooge, because I don't believe Israel did it. But yeah, leave your comments coming in. We'll go through them. We'll reply to the best ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there are two major stories that have occurred and are occurring here in the UK. The first one is that a very well-known Muslim activist, Majid Freeman, has been jailed.
Yeah.
He was on trial because of incidents that happened in Leicester, his home city, some years back now. It was related to Hindutva, what we've reported on Hindutva extremist action in Leicester, which led to some street battles between Muslims and the Hindutva supporters in Leicester and also Birmingham as well. Tell me about the story, Roshan, because I think that basically he was jailed because of comments he made around a police officer. It wasn't necessarily...
I find this quite shocking. So Majid Freeman is someone that we both know and we spent time with during the Hindutva violence in Leicester. I think it was August, September 2002. Now, Majid has also been charged with another offence relating to his social media posts about Palestine. But this isn't what we're talking about today. This is another trial that he was convicted over related to his actions in Leicester in September 2002. So basically, he was on trial for, I think, basically instigating and also swearing at a police officer. And he's been banged up for 22 weeks.
So the conviction is related to an incident of public disorder in Leicester on September 17, 2022. The court decided that Majid Freeman intended, quote, immediate unlawful violence and used abusive words with the intention that violence would be provoked. So that's what the court found.
So basically, we spent time with Majid during those incidents, and he did an exemplary job and a very prominent job, perhaps the most prominent job out of anybody, of exposing the Hindutva instigation and violence in Leicester during that period, which I think now is very well established. And he also criticized the police very harshly for allowing it to happen, to effectively allow paramilitary style marches to take place by Hindutva in Muslim areas of Leicester. So he's very critical of the police. And I think it was during one of those riots where Muslims, at some point, they said enough is enough, and they wanted to take back control of the streets. So I don't think Majid never did any violence or anything, or he never hit anybody or whatever, but he was accused of swearing at a police officer. It went to trial and he's locked up. All I can say is that I witnessed personally Majid calling for calm, talking to Hindus as well as Muslims.
Yes.
Because he took people to interview Hindus as well. And he was always at pains to say that there were good community relations in Leicester. We don't have a problem with the Hindus. It's just these Hindutva fanatics who are coming here to instigate, often from outside of Leicester. Also, and very crucially, there were many Muslims that wanted to, from other parts of the country, that wanted to travel to Leicester to get involved, to defend the Muslims.
Yes, that's
We
right.
know for a fact there were loads of Muslims from Birmingham and elsewhere that wanted to flood Leicester and to have a show of force. He called against that. He told them not to do it, and they listened to him. So literally, he was calming tensions at the time. But it seems that none of that has been taken into account.
Yeah, I remember witnessing similar things to that, like you say, at the time, because we were there reporting. And I'm surprised. I'm surprised, to be honest with you.
I'm really concerned as well that I think our community voices are being shut down. I think perhaps they're being made an example of as well. This is what I suspect very strongly. But it's important that we're not kind of intimidated by this. We have to keep on the hook, keep speaking the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one story. The other story is, again, another legal battle that's being faced by another Muslim activist. I'll see if I can bring up her details now. So this is a sister who was attending a pro-Palestine rally some time ago. This was after October the 7th. There have been weekly marches for Palestine happening in central London every weekend, pretty much since October the 7th and the Israeli attack on Gaza began.
She's facing a trial. She's been charged with racial hatred or something, yeah.
Charged with racial hatred because of the coconut sign that she held up. And as you can see, Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman have also featured in that sign. So now there's a campaign underway to try and get these charges dropped.
In order to understand why coconut as a term is important for people of colour, you have to understand how racism operates in the UK today. And when you see borders being closed against people fleeing from wars that were created by European powers to begin with, then you come to some kind of understanding how, when brown people and black people use those narratives, that ultimately what they're doing is perpetuating and amplifying the narratives of the far right and white supremacy. Support Maria Hussein, support the Cage 6 by signing the petition demanding that the case be dropped.
To try and
let's see. You're gonna be covering this tomorrow. Also, we have to mention that when she initially went to Westminster Magistrates Court a few months ago, activists from Cage were outside the court with placards ridiculing the fact that she was on trial at all, and they were arrested themselves for a racially aggravated offence. I think 6 of them were arrested. So it's not just, and they're awaiting charge now. I don't think any of them have been charged, but they're awaiting charge. But she has been charged. You're going to be there tomorrow. So brothers and sisters, follow Robert's coverage tomorrow on 5 Pillars. You're going to be at the trial to see what happens. I think there are going to be a few speakers outside the court as well.
So basically, what activists are saying is at stake here is that freedom of speech, particularly the speech of black and brown people in this country, is under attack. You've summed it up very well in past episodes that basically it seems as if white majority institutions like the police and the government are trying to intimidate minority communities in this country about what they can and can't say about themselves, policing their language.
Literally.
And this is a precedent that shouldn't be tolerated or allowed, simply because it's authoritarian. And, you know, I mean, the fact is that the reason that minority communities talk in this way is because of the long history that they've suffered of racism in countries like this, post-imperialist country like Britain. You summarise it much better than me.
It's an attack on our history, on our culture, on our freedom to speak freely about ourselves without having a ignorant majority community, ignorant on this issue, trying to impose their will upon us.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see how it plays out. But there is a petition that needs to be signed that was launched very recently. You can find that on 5 Pillars social media platforms. We've shared it as a Cage petition originally. There is this protest tomorrow, which we're going to be covering and reporting on as well. I think everyone just needs to educate themselves and support this story as it develops and continues, because this is a 2-day session, this one.
Oh, is it?
So there's a protest tomorrow. We'll see how it plays out, but I've been warned it could be a 2-day session. So let's see how it goes. Will there be a verdict? We'll have to see. But yes, it's a big story. I think we've got.
You're going on holiday, aren't you?
Exactly.
I'm going to have to cover it.
So let's see how it goes. Let's see how it goes. But this is a big one. This is a big one. Even I can tell that. I think the pressure on the minority community especially is very well felt now, as the state appears to be becoming more and more authoritarian in nature, including under this Labour government. So there you have it. Is there anything else you wanted to discuss on the show, Roshan? Any big news coming from your side of things?
No.
No, good. Well, there we go then. I think that's a great time to end. Like Roshan said earlier on, please do leave your comments in the comment section below. We're very interested to hear what you think. I think that Roshan is absolutely wrong about most things, right about some, and I think that I'm right about everything else. So thank you very much. Please like, share and subscribe. It helps the channel immensely. And until next time, we will catch you again on Muslims Uncensored. It's Assalamu alaikum wa salama for now.